is Jenna Zaffino. I'm the COO of a company called Spark This Day that is founded by Gabby. And as my role in the company, I design interventions and interruptions specifically to help people with burnout and manage their stress. But when it comes to the word management, oftentimes we think of the word control or influencing, and it's when we put management with stress, it's an ideal, but it lacks a little reality. So today we're going to talk a little bit more about synthesis, which is taking the situation you have, addressing the situation that you're faced with, and seeing how you can integrate in the center, in the middle, to make a informed and hopefully useful choice for yourself to navigate through stress. Because even though I fall in the realm of expertise of stress management, I am stressed. And I'm willing to bet you are experiencing stress too. Yes. And we can only expect that in an environment, especially in the workplace, where there's performance and there's accountability and there's financial issues go at hand, all those things, and then throw that in a petri dish with a global pandemic and the world at large and everything that's happening. And we were not designed to be interfacing with this much stress. And so it only makes sense to have a few tools in our toolbox to deal with it. We're going to talk about 5 of the most often suggested ways to deal with your stress, but we're going to break them down because it's not always easy to go there right away. So let me just ask you first and foremost, who's like 1 foot out the door into the weekend? It's okay if you are. Yeah, it's Friday. I mean, we're kind of there, right? And that is an indicator that you've worked well, you've worked hard this week, but it's also an indicator that you need a break. And I want us to start to hold that indication. Like when we're out the door, we want to remember that our body, our brain, our foot is giving us a signal like, hey, it's time to downregulate. It's time to take the break. It's time to remember who I am. So let's start with the stress response. We've heard about this before. There's fight or flight. And what happens when we integrate or engage with a stressor is that we have a physiological reaction to it. And that physiological reaction either puts us into an offensive mode where we're ready to go at it. And sometimes that can manifest as snapping, leaving, writing a really powerful email without waiting the 24 hours before pressing send, that kind of thing. Or we have the flight where we just shut down, take off, run in the other direction, have a lot of gossip behind the scenes about what's wrong without addressing the actual problem. And yep, I saw that, yep. And these situations, these reactions are normal and they're universal. But they were originally intended for real threats to our safety, like animals, climate, dinosaurs maybe, no. The problem that we face with stress today is that we are in an evolutionary mismatch. Our responses and our reactions, those fight or flight responses, they haven't evolved adequately enough to lower or downgrade to meet the needs of, you've just cleaned out your inbox, maybe it never happens for me, but you've just cleaned out your inbox and then it's Friday at 3:30 and you get that one email that asks for the long report or the extra whatever, and you're just like, ah, and you're responding as if the tiger has come to get you when in reality it's an email. So these responses are mismatched, and so what we need to learn how to do is to interrupt ourselves and better approach them so that we don't just lose our energy, lose ourself, and lose our power and our choice and our autonomy over our decisions. We need to understand what's happening in the moment, start to understand what we're feeling and how we're feeling it in our body, and then get to know those signals as an opportunity to make choices for ourselves as we move forward. So if you would, just place a hand on the area of your body where you experience stress when something happens in the moment that really ticks you off. Yeah, so we've got hands and hearts, necks, shoulders, yeah, upper back, right, belly. Yeah, let's talk about what happens in that moment. So when we are faced with any sort of threat, like an email on a Friday or a tiger, we start to get our senses really sharpened. We start to become highly alert. Next, our heart rate quickens. We get ready. Our blood pressure increases, pumping blood out to all of the extremities. There's increased circulation. And finally, there's increased muscular tension to either fight or flight. So that tension you're feeling in your chest, in your shoulders, in your upper back is a response to the threat that you perceive. Here's the thing. When we are in rapid fire succession of these threats that happen, that are very real to us, sometimes we never go back down into that regulated state. And so you start, your senses are sharpening, your heart rate goes up, your blood pressure goes, you increase circulation, you fight or you flight, and you come down maybe halfway, and then another email comes in, your senses, your heart rate goes up, you go, and before you know it, you're walking around overactivated. And so the thing is, we're never going to eradicate stress. It's here to stay. And when looked at in an opportunistic way, we can see that stress is really a vehicle for growth. When we look at it in exercise, by lifting weights, you stress your muscles, you help them become stronger. By walking a little longer, you stress your cardiovascular system or your muscles in walking. You get to increase your endurance or increase the distance that you're able to manage a walk. When you're able to effectively deal with the stressors that are coming your way and categorize them as super intense or super threatening, or hey, I know what to do here, you start to increase your ability to manage or synthesize your stress in the moment, and you have more opportunity to downregulate or avoid living in that activated state all the time. And now I'm going to give you a lot of tools within the next 20, but one tool that I want to offer to you is a really simple one, and that's the tool of nose breathing. Okay? So the thing I want you to remember as a little earworm, my mouth is for eating, my nose is for breathing. The next time you're in a meeting or a gathering or even a Zoom call, I want you to watch the folks in the room and notice who comes in. Right? And maybe it's you. We all have those moments, right? So when we see sighing, we can look at it as this emergency strategy to regulate our stress. We're dumping carbon dioxide, we're trying to get O2 back in, and it usually indicates a state of over-anxiousness or overactivity in the nervous system. Sighing is that emergency strategy to let it go. And when you see somebody who is just walking the room, yawning a lot, if you yawn right now, it's okay because it's totally suggestive. Yawning a lot, sighing a lot, it is not that they have a bad attitude, it's not that they're disrespectful, often it's that they're living in a state of overactivation. So when we practice nose breathing on the regular, the oxygen that's taken in through our nose is more welcome into our lungs. It's moisturized, it's clean, it has a little bit of a barrier, so it's not so much happening at one point in time. It's readily welcomed into our lungs, and you can usually breathe a little slower, which helps that heart rate decelerate and helps you activate that lower level of calm. Just give me an example. Everybody take 5 deep breaths in through your mouth. Go. All right. How's on a scale of 1 to 5, where's your energy? Are you heightened up by a 5 or are you low down by a 1? Low. High. Mid.
I feel the difference.
Okay. Now take 5 deep breaths through your nose, maybe a little slower. As deep as you like. You starting to feel it already? Yeah. Yeah, starting to feel a little lower. Now we're not asking you to check out, right? But you, sometimes on 5 you're like, what? What was happening in this meeting? Which report? What? But this is a way, it is a place of power to hold yourself with breath. It is also much more effective in oxygenating and also breathing in kind of less stuff in the air, so to speak, all right? So a little tip for you there. Let's talk about stress, and the number one point I want to make on this is that it's universal. There is not one person in the world, not even Eckhart Tolle, who can, or the Dalai Lama even, and he would admit this, no person does stress perfectly. No person can eradicate it. You would literally have to be isolated, and even the isolation would be stressful for you because we're built for community. So these are a couple of just basic definitions that come from some of the topmost stress researchers at Harvard. A non-specific reaction of the body to any demand placed on it. Any! Non-specific. That means you could be stressing from the way your seat feels right now, and that is still stress. It still counts. A reaction to any situation that requires adjustment or change. Change is hard. Change shakes the status quo. Even when the room is arranged differently, that can really stress people out who need like regular, touch points of where they're supposed to be in their space. And then a reaction to a perception of a threat. So one person's stressor can be another person's enjoyment. One person thinking about talking up the front of the room with this whole crowd of people can be totally anxious and just make them crumble. Another person can be like, let me at it. I want that. It's so exciting. And so it's important to remember that this universal aspect of stress is affecting us all at different levels in different ways. And so it makes sense that we should have different strategies to work with it for ourselves. Yeah. Good. All right, I said this before, we were not designed to be stressed constantly. It is a very energy-intensive state. It's hard on the body and mind. So if there is one thing that I believe is a kind of our mission, our journey in life, it's to learn how to navigate stress, because on the other side of that navigation or that regulation is happiness, it's calmness, it's enjoyment, it's wonder. It's looking at the world not as a threat, but as something wonderful before us, even as cold and snowy as it might be today. So as we accept that as our assignment, it feels like a big one, but I think it's worth noting that it is the long game that we're after and not a quick fix. And if we can get that into our mind, we have a better opportunity to work with it. So these are the top 5 solutions. If you Google, you're going to see meditate. How many people in the room practice mindfulness or meditate? Okay. How many people wish they could do it more or longer or to a better degree? Okay, yeah, we know we're supposed to do it, and our world is not really conducive to a stop, drop, and breathe situation. But in any case, meditation and mindfulness. I want to talk about that one first. We talked a little bit about the stress response in terms of your physiological body. And the idea behind meditation is exactly what we were talking about in that circular graph. It's to bring yourself into a space where you can access a lower level of heart rate, a slower level of breathing, where you can bring yourself away from a sense of fight or flight and into what's called rest and digest. When you're in a state of rest and digest, it allows you to better understand the situation in its true presentation instead of just the story that you're telling yourself about it. Because we can tell some pretty fantastic stories. Yeah, absolutely. All right. When it comes to exercise, we know what exercise is. But why are we told to exercise to lower our stress levels when earlier I indicated that exercise can be stress? Does anybody know?
It's a different kind of stress, though.
Yeah, it's a different kind of stress. Your brain doesn't really know it can't discern the distinct difference between this is good stress and this is bad stress. It kind of reads it all as stress. But because there is often an element of joy and choice and influence over how fast you're walking, how much you're lifting, it does give you a little bit more autonomy. It feels like it's your stress, that you can stop it or start it, and it increases resiliency over the period of time to have a capacity for stress. So if you can imagine that you're on the couch a lot, and you're not moving a whole lot, and your life is pretty kind of level, but then a stressor comes in, that's going to spike things up. But if you know what it's like, the experience of your body, because your brain is constantly downloading patterns and experiences, your brain understands what it's like to be in the mode of exercise to have a heightened heart rate and it doesn't perceive that as a super big threat, then you might be more equipped to manage that stress in the moment. Yeah. Self-care. We're reading a book right now in one of my communities called The Gospel of Wellness, and it's like Goop, gurus, and the myth of self-care. Self-care has been co-opted into a $4.4 trillion industry called wellness. And we are part of it, but hopefully the good part of it. But self-care has this indication of bubble baths and champagne and taking the days off and going to the spa. And when we're talking about self-care, we're talking about self-attendance. It's the ability to check in with yourself and say, hey girlfriend, which is what I say to myself, what's up? What's going on? What would be helpful? And that doesn't cost anything. And so when we're starting to practice self-care, we're actualizing that our needs are important. We're learning how to articulate them to ourselves because in order for us to address those needs, we got to know what they are. We have to be clear about them. And when we practice that self-care, we can better communicate to others how to take care of us too. So setting expectations, in some cases setting boundaries, but you can't go from a state of stress to setting a hard boundary. You gotta have some interventions in the middle of it. Remove the stressor, great. Quit the job, sell the house, move away, go to Canada, right? That was everybody saying. The entire world in 2016, for the most part, was like, we're moving. It's like, good luck. You're still going to have the same stress response, just to a different person, right? So removing the stressor is an ideal solution, but again, we're going to have to take some steps to get there. And I like to think of these, maybe not the meditation, but the mindfulness aspect of paying attention and being aware of the sensations of your body and looking beyond just like the gray outside, maybe finding a different snowflake or noticing a different piece of architecture in the city, looking up from the phone, looking up from the ground, noticing the world around you. I like to think that these are progressive in nature and will help us to get to the place where we can remove the stressor. They'll also give us a really good indication that if we're not feeling like any of these are addressing our needs completely, then it might be time to go see professional help. And there's no shame in finding someone to help you or to process through stuff, because sometimes the chatter is so loud because you've been dealing with it for so long that the expectation of you doing it all yourself is just another stressor. So we want to be really mindful that we're trying interventions, but if they don't work, seeking help is a power play. All right, I want to talk a little bit about resources. Again, like you're in a super stressful situation, you can't be like, time out. I mean, you could. I think it would be a power move, but not everybody would be okay with that. You know, in my household, when my husband and I, we're inherently competitive. I wish we weren't. It's just so we each want to win the argument. And so we've adopted two strategies. One is, before we start the conversation, we say, is this a help conversation or a hug conversation? Do you need help or do you need a hug? Because that'll set the expectation. The other is that if it gets too high, I will say, I need to shift, I need a break, and I'll be back in 5. And if it's not happening in 5, I'll come back and I'll be, we need to table this to another time because I'm not in my body enough to be clear about what I have to say. And it feels real silly in the moment, but it has saved our marriage. So understanding that it's not the realistic piece, and it's probably taken us 22 years to get there. That said, that shift, it's all about the pause. If you can pause and recognize your needs in the moment, you are one step ahead of the game. So here is one exercise that I want to teach you that you can walk away with. It's called the 5-4-3-2-1. So you're in a state of heightened blood pressure, sweat. You're feeling your feelings. You're getting ready to fight or flee. You pause. You remember the pause button. And you think, 5 things I can see. Chair, maroon sweater, exit sign, building, light. 4 things I can feel. My sweater, too many layers. My heels, my earrings, and my voice. 3 things I can hear, my voice, the air conditioner, something outside, the city buzzing. Two things I can smell: a very clean room, thankfully, and I think my coffee breath. Sorry. And one thing I can taste, see number 2. All right, so when you are in this moment of recognizing your bodily sensations, which are the 5 senses, now you're bringing it back to you. Now you're not focusing all your energy on the threat, but you're coming back into yourself to bring it back down a little and see what your options are, see what your choices are. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 is one thing I want you to come away with. The second is, and this is really useful in traffic or in very acute, stressful situations. A really hurtful comment, sometimes reading something in email or social media that just hits the wrong way. You can take it away from the smallness of the momentary situation and expand your visual field into a panorama. So you open your eyes wider and you see as much as you possibly can see. And there are 2 reasons. One is a shift of focus. Another is kind of a metaphorical reminder that the world is bigger than that email. Your life is bigger than that email. And there's more to see. And even, I do this in the city. It does not look like this, but we take what we can get, right? All right. This is another really great exercise. We're going to do it together. It's sniff, sniff, poo. All right? It's all right? You will not forget it, right? All right, let's do it. Let's think of what's a stressful situation? Being cut off in traffic? What comes up for you when it's stressful?
Trying to get my 8-year-old.
Out the door. I have an 8-year-old too. My God. It's from the breakfast table. There's a soccer game happening. I forgot 6 things for school. Okay, so we're there. We can kind of address this. We're up in our areas of stress. We're going to do 5 sniff, sniff, poos in 3, 2, 1. Slow inhale. Slow exhale. Feel it? Yeah, a little easier. What's also good with kids is they'll be like,
What?
exactly, and you can teach them that too. So we activate higher than the activation with a little more breath, and then it's like an interruption to our signal, and then we bring it down a notch. Okay. Let's go to the next one. Another one which we just did is extending the exhale. It's a super easy strategy that you can do anywhere. You breathe in fully, and then you just make the exhalation longer than the inhalation. And you let it go. You let your shoulders drop. So let's try it. Take a deep breath in through your nose. You can breathe out through your mouth and just longer. Let the shoulders drop. Let your hips fall into the seat. Let your spine release. Let your upper back melt for my friends over there. Yes, yeah. Extend the exhale. Also a power play, especially for women. There's nothing scarier than a woman taking a deep breath. Another interruption of the thought. I know I'm going a few minutes over, and I understand if you have to leave, we're almost there. Interrupting the thought with a higher thought, a better thought. Sometimes it can be a word like peace, calm, isolation, I don't know, whatever it is. So it's the thought of you take your breath in, and then you either audibly or in your mind say peace on the extended exhale. And it's a way of pausing and resetting. Peace. It is your brain is so ready to be suggested to that if you give it the suggestion, it will absolutely follow through. This is one of my favorites as a storyteller in my own brain. Ask questions of yourself. What is happening right now? What do I think is happening? Because sometimes it's like, what is happening? I've received an email. What do I think is happening? Someone's going to kill me. What is really happening? Someone sent me an email that I'm having an adverse response to. Why am I having that adverse response? Oh, I got caught off in traffic this morning and didn't do my panoramic breath to reset. I've been walking around like this all morning, and so this was the trigger that sent me over the edge. Okay? Take time to uncover and discover that story, break it down for yourself, understand the plot. and then be willing to shift it with some of the earlier interventions. This can be if it is a bigger stressor, especially in the workplace. I feel that one of the biggest contributors to stress is the fact that we think it's only happening to us, when often there's a universal understanding of the situation at hand. And everybody might be experiencing it a little bit differently individually, but when you start to think about it or you start to reach out, you recognize, oh, this is actually a problem that I think we can address together, or maybe we can bring to light together, because it's affecting everybody differently. So what are my choices here? I can stay silent or I can speak up. Where is the support? I think this is an underutilized question. Sometimes I'll go, what does support look like? So I know kind of what it doesn't look like. Sometimes it doesn't look like having a sit down with a person in power to like spill your guts and be vulnerable when they're not ready to take care of you in that moment. Where's the support? Maybe it's a friend, maybe it's a family member, maybe it's talking through the situation, maybe it's a mental health professional. And then again, like, what is really happening here? Is this just happening to me, or is it happening to a lot of people? And what are the choices look like in this situation? And I think there's that fight or flight piece comes into play with that need to take action right now. And going back to that pause is your power. Those questions give you perspective. And when we're in the fight or flight, we are here, small. When we're in the breathing, the expanded perspective, the inquiry, now we've got some choices. Now we've got some alternate ways of managing. So the last piece that I want to talk about today is alignment. One of the biggest ways that stress enters in the door is when something in our life is out of alignment. And when it comes to burnout, often burnout happens not only because of overwork or high levels of stress, but because the environment that a person is working in feels like a mismatch to their values and the way they live their life. So when your integrity is threatened, when your values are not respected or revealed or highlighted by your workplace or by the environment you're in, that can lead to high levels of stress. So this is an area of long-term investigation. And in my work at Spark, we address all of these aspects because of the fact that we understand that having quality relationships, knowing how to show up for yourself, knowing how to engage with others, knowing how to address the environment that you're in, and also knowing how to be an active member of your community, it all lends itself to your levels of well-being and to alignment in your life. We understand that sometimes your social life looks really high, but you're hanging out with people you don't like. And so it's not doing the job that was intended to do. Sometimes movement is happening, but you're involved in a high-intensity exercise program and your body is mad at you about it. It wants something easier, it wants something enjoyable, it wants to remember itself through the movement, but it's doing a trend that somebody said that you should do to get to a goal that you never wanted in the first place. Sometimes it's workload, and you're putting all of your effort into work, and none of it into the other stuff, and we know how that shows up. Sometimes we're on so many diets that we forget what it feels like to feel full and satisfied. Yeah, January is a perfect time for that, right? Let's let the diets go. Enjoy your food. And sometimes it's rest. And sometimes we're so busy doing for others that we forget that rest is the baseline where we remember who we are. So these areas of investigation, I saw a couple people taking a little snapshot. It is such an important point of inquiry to understand alignment. And it's not that if one of these is out, that again, you reduce the stress or you knock it out, because that could be the cause of more stress. But instead, you use it as information that, okay, my social life is actually not where I want it to be, and work is getting all of it. So I'm going to make some small adjustments over the next 3 to 6 months. I'm going to use my interventions. I'm going to start saying no to this, and I'm going to start reaching out to this other person to spend time with. I'm going to explore some new avenues. And I'm going to put intentions into play for the long game to start leveling out the alignment in my life. And you're going to be knocked out of alignment for your entire life. It's just what happens with us. But when your comeback rate is greater than your setback rate, that's when you're living a life that's aligned, that's managed, that's synthesized. So if you are engaged, I'm so happy you stayed for the whole thing, by the way. If there are any questions, I would love to answer any questions about specific situations or anything that's come up for you. And these are 2 QR codes that will take you to the Spark This Day website and also help you get in contact with me. And I just want to thank you for your attention on a Friday in the middle of the winter, in the morning, to talk about stress management. It's just like good for you. Yeah.
Question, sort of like comment. I
Yeah.
read that you can feel burnout at your job because you are the ear, where people come and they just dump on you.
Yeah.
And sometimes I felt that. I was like, okay, man. And then I go home like, ugh.
Yeah, you're drained. Yeah. So that feels to me like a bit of a mismatch, and I've been there, by the way, which is why I can speak to it, but a bit of a mismatch between your role and who you are. And so there's an article, I'll see if I can find it. It's like when you're walking around like your LinkedIn profile, you're like, I'm a helper, and I am a people person, and I am mergers and acquisitions. Thank you. It's not a real human condition, right? So you have to think about, like, people perceive you to be one way until you educate them otherwise. And it doesn't mean that you have to say, stop talking. But this is where boundary setting comes in. This is where the self-care comes in. This is where you're recognizing right now, right here today, I'm being drained by being the person everybody goes to. So this is the time when you say, where am I best resourced to be a listening ear and not lose my own energy in the process? And then you say, very kindly, because clear is kind. It's important to get that. Clear is kind. Hey, I know this is really important to you, and I'd love to listen to you. Can we set up a little time away from this moment so I can be fully focused on Tuesdays at 3 o'clock or whatever it is that you feel is a good thing? Yeah, I'd love to talk to you about more about this. Let's set a little lunch date or a coffee date for this day. And it will be hard because it will be different, but they'll appreciate it, and then they'll remember that. And then maybe the next time they'll come to you and say, hey, I'd love to talk about something with you. When is a good time? Instead of just, yeah. And that's a valuable role you play too. So you gotta protect it.
Will do.
Yeah, yeah.
Thanks.
You're welcome. Anybody else? Over here.
Just wanted to say thank you. I am gonna run.
Yeah, thank you.
But I'm appreciative of this event. We should do this more often, more frequently, and not on the Fridays, because I tried to campaign to get people to join me. I did save one soul.
Welcome to the cult. No, I'm just kidding.
I think this would be very beneficial.
Yeah.
And I love your delivery.
Thank you.
But one thing I noticed when I try to de-escalate, I get sleepy. Is that normal? Like even during the breathing exercises, I'm over here like this.
Okay, so what do you think that signal, if it's your body, what is your body trying to tell you?
I want to go to bed.
Yeah, I'm tired.
But I'm not. But I am. But
You
I'm
Well, let's just say that we as human beings in a major metropolitan city at this time of our lives, we are very comfortable with the grind. And sometimes we use the energy as a renewable resource from the go, go, go. So we go to one thing, we go to the next thing, we go to the next thing, and it's going, and it's going, and it's going. But you're giving yourself a break, and your body's like, yes, checking out. So I think the work to rest on the worm of the squiggle, maybe there's a little bit more. You'd be surprised, even if the rest is a reset for 5 minutes. You know, it might not be more sleep, but then again, you know, when you start investigating, what is rest? How do I value rest? You love it, yeah. Do you know Trisha Hershey, Nap Ministry?
No, but I should join that ministry.
Yeah. Look, I think you would appreciate it. It's a rest as a birthright and also as resistance, and it's a wonderful resource. She's a beautiful human being. The Nap Ministry all the different spectrum about the ways in which you can address rest and why you should, and where you might be focusing more energy on the grind than on the recalibration. Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Have a great rest of your day. Anybody else before we go? Yeah.
No, I wanted to thank you.
Okay.
The building manager, and this is great. And
Awesome.
I appreciate the feedback that we need more of it, and
Yeah.
I think that that's definitely something that as a building we can definitely look into.
100%. Well, this is our specialty, so we're happy to, do more interactive too. 30 minutes was like
It's a lot.
the intro, and I think we got a lot in. It was good. It's probably 45 now, so we're good. We're good.
Yeah.
But thank you, everybody. Appreciate
Thank you.
you.
Thank you
And
so much.
don't forget your tools.
Thank